I suppose the military must be flying its toy soldiers first class these days. That's what the arrogant flight attendant sneered at Captain Blackwood before publicly downgrading him to economy. But what she didn't realise is that her little humiliation would soon spark a national scandal, dragging the entire airline into court. So how did a quiet royal guard end up taking down a corporate giant? Before we answer that, press the subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Captain William Blackwood moved with disciplined precision through Gatwick Airport's main terminal. Though dressed in a tailored navy suit, the military bearing from 15 years in the Queen's Royal Guard was unmistakable. He checked his watch and confirmed he was on schedule for his journey to Edinburgh, where he would deliver sensitive documents to the Royal Regiment of Scotland. His diplomatic pouch was securely locked in his carry-on, alongside a carefully packed case containing his ceremonial uniform. At the first-class check-in counter, the attendant, Emily according to her name badge, greeted him professionally. When she noticed his military ID, her demeanour warmed. "Royal Guard. My brother served in the Royal Marines. He always spoke highly of working alongside the Guards." "The Marines are exceptional soldiers," Blackwood replied with a genuine smile. "Please give him my regards." Boarding the aircraft, Blackwood was greeted by a flight attendant with artificially brightened blonde hair and a practiced smile. Her name tag identified her as Karen Jones. "Welcome aboard," she said mechanically. "Seat 3A is down the aisle on your left." Blackwood stowed his carry-on with his uniform case separately and settled into his first-class seat, keeping the diplomatic pouch beside him. A distinguished man in his 50s took the aisle seat, the name Nathan Wells embossed on his portfolio. When Karen returned with hot towels, her smile faltered upon reaching Blackwood. "What brings you to Edinburgh today?" she asked with an odd tone. "Official business," he replied. "What line of work are you in?" she pressed, lingering unusually long. "I serve in Her Majesty's Royal Guard." Something changed in Karen's expression. That familiar look Blackwood had seen countless times when people reduced his role to mere ceremony. "Oh," she said condescendingly, "one of those soldiers who stands outside the palace. How quaint." "I suppose the military must be flying its toy soldiers first class these days," she added loudly enough for others to hear. "Your taxpayer pounds at work, everyone." As the flight prepared for takeoff, Karen's attitude toward Blackwood grew increasingly cold while she remained friendly with other passengers. When the seatbelt sign switched off, Blackwood noticed his uniform case had shifted and stood to adjust it. Karen appeared instantly. "Is there a problem, sir?" Her tone suggested annoyance. "My uniform case needs repositioning to prevent damage," he explained. "That large case is yours? It's taking up most of the bin," she said with narrowed eyes. "It contains my ceremonial uniform, which requires careful handling." "Well," Karen announced loudly, "perhaps if you'd checked it like a considerate passenger, others would have space for their belongings." Military protocol prohibits checking ceremonial uniforms due to their historical significance. "Of course," Karen replied sarcastically, "the military always expects special treatment." Several passengers watched as Blackwood calmly repositioned his case. "While we're discussing expectations," Karen continued, her voice raised, "I've been reviewing the manifest. First class seems an unusual indulgence for military travel." Blackwood returned to his seat without responding. Nathan Wells, beside him, looked increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. "I mean," Karen persisted, standing in the aisle beside their row, "most government employees fly economy. Taxpayers shouldn't fund luxury travel for palace guards, should they?" "My travel arrangements were approved through proper channels," Blackwood replied evenly. "The sensitive nature of my assignment necessitated certain accommodations." Karen scoffed. "I've heard that before. Military personnel are always gaming the system for upgrades. Must be nice to have your vacation subsidized by the public." "I need to see your ticket again," she demanded, hand outstretched. Maintaining his dignity, Blackwood retrieved his boarding pass from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. Karen examined it with exaggerated scrutiny. "This doesn't specify the reason for your first-class allocation," she declared triumphantly. "Standard protocol requires proper documentation for premium seating when travelling on government expense." "The booking was arranged through military channels and approved by my commanding officer," Blackwood explained patiently. "Is everything all right, Karen?" A male flight attendant approached, his name tag reading Nolan Grayson. As the senior cabin crew member, his intervention should have diffused the situation. "This gentleman is occupying a first-class seat without proper documentation," Karen explained with barely concealed disdain. "He claims it's military business, but we all know how that goes." Rather than questioning Karen's approach, Nolan nodded in agreement. "I see, that is concerning." "I have valid authorization," Blackwood stated firmly. "My commanding officer arranged this booking due to the nature of my assignment." "Without written authorization specifying the reason for first-class accommodation, we can't verify that," Nolan replied, his tone coldly professional. "I'm afraid we'll need to relocate you to economy. There's an available seat in row 27. "This is absurd," Nathan Wells interjected. "He's shown you his boarding pass for this seat." "Sir, with all due respect, this is an airline matter," Karen replied dismissively. Nolan leaned closer to Blackwood. "You can either move to economy voluntarily, or we can discuss this further with the captain, which may result in other measures upon landing." The threat was clear. Make a scene, and there would be consequences. Blackwood weighed his options, acutely aware of the eyes on him and what his uniform, even when not worn, represented. "Very well," Blackwood said quietly, his dignity intact despite the humiliation. "I'll relocate." Karen's triumphant expression was barely concealed as she gestured toward the back of the plane. "I'll show you to your new seat." As Blackwood stood to retrieve his belongings, Nathan Wells shook his head in disgust. "This is completely unacceptable treatment," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "I'll be filing a complaint." "Please don't trouble yourself," Blackwood replied, his composure unwavering. "Some battles aren't worth fighting." The walk past rows of curious passengers felt interminable, each step a public announcement of his demotion. Karen made no effort to minimize his embarrassment, her posture radiating satisfaction. "Row 27, middle seat," she announced loudly when they reached the back of the aircraft, pointing to a cramped space between an elderly woman by the window and a heavy-set man already spilling into the middle seat area. "I'll need to store my uniform case properly. It contains ceremonial items of significant value." Karen rolled her eyes. "The overhead bins are full in this section. You'll have to check it." "As I explained earlier, military regulations prohibit—" "Then you should have thought of that before boarding without proper documentation for first class," Karen interrupted. "Either check the case or find a way to fit it under the seat in front of you." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Blackwood to solve the problem himself. "Excuse me," a female voice called from across the aisle. "You can store your case in the bin above me. There's still space." Blackwood turned to see a woman in her early 30s with intelligent eyes and a sympathetic expression. "That's very kind, thank you," he replied. After carefully stowing his uniform case, Blackwood squeezed into the tight middle seat, the diplomatic pouch clutched securely on his lap. "I'm Emma Richardson," the woman across the aisle introduced herself once he was settled. "What happened up there was absolutely shameful." "Captain William Blackwood," he replied with a slight nod, "and, unfortunately, it's not uncommon." "A captain in the Royal Guard, forced to sit in a middle seat while transporting what I assume are official documents," Emma observed, nodding toward the diplomatic pouch. "That's more than shameful. It's potentially a security issue." "You seem familiar with protocol. Let's just say I understand the significance of that uniform case you were so careful with," Emma replied. "My father served in the household division for 20 years. Emma leaned across the aisle, keeping her voice low. Have you considered filing a formal complaint about your treatment? Blackwood gave a slight shake of his head. I prefer not to make personal grievances into larger issues. The uniform represents something greater than my individual experience. That's precisely why it matters, Emma insisted. This isn't just about you as an individual. It's about respect for what you represent. Emma hesitated, then reached into her handbag and retrieved a business card. She passed it across the aisle to him. The card identified her as Emma Richardson, Senior Counsel, Harrington and Williams, Discrimination Law Specialists. I've spent the last 8 years representing service members in discrimination cases, she explained. What happened to you today? I've seen it hundreds of times. Airlines, restaurants, hotels, all refusing to honour military discounts, denying earned benefits, or treating service members as second-class citizens. I appreciate your concern, Ms. Richardson, but Emma, please, she interrupted. And before you dismiss this, you should know that your experience isn't isolated. These incidents are increasing, not decreasing. Because my firm's military discrimination caseload has doubled in the past 3 years, Emma explained. We've documented a pattern of systematic discrimination against military personnel by certain corporations, including the very airline you're flying with today. We've received 17 complaints against this airline in the past year alone. All involve service members being denied accommodations they were entitled to, being removed from premium seating, or facing hostile treatment from staff. That's concerning, Blackwood admitted. It's more than concerning, Emma replied. It's illegal. What happened to you today wasn't just rude, it violated your civil rights. We'll be landing in Edinburgh for a 40-minute layover before continuing to Inverness, Emma noted, checking her watch. That would give you enough time to make a phone call to someone who could advise you officially. You seem quite invested in this, Blackwood observed. My father faced similar discrimination after 20 years of service. No one stood up for him. I promised myself I'd never let that happen to another service member if I could help it. The personal revelation hit home for Blackwood. As the aircraft began its descent into Edinburgh, he found himself reaching a decision. I'll make a call during the layover, he said finally. My commanding officer should be informed, at minimum. The Edinburgh terminal bustled with the usual airport activity as Blackwood found a quiet corner near his connecting gate. Before dialing, he carefully documented the morning's events in his small notebook. Names, times, specific comments, his military training ensuring nothing significant was omitted. Taking a deep breath, he dialed a number from memory. After 2 rings, a crisp voice answered. Colonel Harrison. Sir, Captain Blackwood reporting. I apologise for the unscheduled contact. Blackwood, the Colonel acknowledged, his tone sharpening with interest. You're en route to Edinburgh with the diplomatic pouch, correct? Yes, sir. Currently on layover at Edinburgh Airport. Is the package secure? Affirmative, sir. The package is intact and in my possession. Blackwood hesitated, then added, However, I'm calling to report an incident that occurred during the flight from Gatwick. Colonel James Harrison, head of the Judge Advocate General's Office for the Household Division, was known for his precise mind and unwavering support of personnel under his command. Proceed, Captain. Blackwood detailed the events concisely, from Karen's initial comments to the forced relocation and subsequent treatment. Harrison listened without interruption, though Blackwood could hear what sounded like typing in the background. And your uniform? Harrison asked, when Blackwood finished. Secure but not ideally stored, sir. I was able to place it in an overhead bin, but not under optimal conditions. I see. Harrison's voice had taken on the cold precision that his subordinates recognized as controlled anger. And you have the names of the flight attendants involved? Yes, sir. Karen Jones and Senior Flight Attendant Nolan Grayson. The firm is legitimate, Harrison confirmed after a brief pause. They've handled several high-profile cases for Navy personnel in recent years. Sir, with respect, I wasn't planning to pursue this matter. I reported it merely as a courtesy and potential security concern regarding the diplomatic pouch. Understood, Captain. However, this isn't merely a personal issue, Harrison replied firmly. The uniform you carry represents the Crown, Disrespect toward it, or toward you as its bearer, is a matter of institutional concern. Furthermore, Harrison continued, if Ms. Richardson is correct about a pattern of such incidents, this becomes a matter of protecting all service members from discriminatory treatment. Proceed to your destination and complete your assigned mission, Harrison instructed. I'll initiate a preliminary inquiry from this end. Document everything: times, locations, exact wording used by airline personnel. Photograph any evidence of mishandling of your uniform upon arrival. One more thing, Blackwood, Harrison added, his tone slightly less formal. You did the right thing by maintaining composure and dignity in a difficult situation. That said, you also did the right thing by reporting this incident. Sometimes the strongest defense of what we stand for requires more than silent endurance. 3 months later, Blackwood met with Emma's legal team at Harrington and Williams in London. The evidence they had gathered was substantial. The airline's internal emails are damning, Emma said, highlighting a document. Their director of customer experience instructed staff to scrutinize and verify all military upgrade requests with extreme prejudice, and stated that ceremonial uniforms should not justify premium accommodations. Colonel Harrison's investigation had uncovered dozens of similar incidents. What began as Blackwood's complaint had evolved into something much larger. 17 service members have joined our class action, said Alan Mercer, the firm's senior partner. Personnel from all branches, with incidents dating back 3 years. The pattern is consistent, Emma explained. Royal Marines, RAF, Army, all experienced similar treatment. The airline's initial response was to dismiss these as isolated misunderstandings and offer travel vouchers. We discovered they flagged military IDs in their system with a code that triggered additional scrutiny not required for other passengers, added Nadia Patel, a junior associate. They created a system that appeared to recognize military service, but actually marked service members for potential denial of benefits. Blackwood thought about the other service members who had come forward, each initially reluctant to speak up, believing their experiences weren't worth making a fuss about. The courtroom fell silent as Justice Eleanor Harrow entered to preside over the preliminary hearing. Blackwood sat beside Emma, wearing his dress uniform with medals, while the airline's confident legal team occupied the opposite table. Westminster Civil Court is now in session, Justice Harrow declared. Blackwood et al. Versus Transatlantic Airways. We're determining whether this matter meets the criteria for class certification. The airline's counsel, Philip Graves, rose immediately. Your Honour, we believe these alleged incidents represent isolated customer service issues, not a pattern of discrimination. I'll hear arguments from both sides, Justice Harrow replied. Ms. Richardson, proceed. When Blackwood took the stand, he recounted the events with military precision. And when the flight attendant disrespected your uniform, how did you respond? Emma asked. I maintained my composure. The uniform represents something greater than any individual wearing it. Yet you're here today. What changed? I learned my silence potentially enabled the mistreatment of others who serve, Blackwood replied, glancing at the other uniformed service members in attendance. True respect for the uniform sometimes requires standing up, not just standing tall. After hearing from other service members with similar experiences and reviewing the internal emails, Justice Harrow addressed the airline's counsel. These documents appear to show a systematic approach to treating military personnel differently. How do you reconcile this with your claim of isolated incidents? Airline executives whispered urgently to their counsel as the hearing's momentum shifted dramatically. After Justice Harrow certified the class action to proceed, the airline quickly requested settlement discussions. The CEO, Richard Thornton, himself attended, signalling how seriously they now took the matter. I want to personally express my regret for your experiences with our airline, Thornton began with practiced contrition. After hours of negotiation, a framework emerged, a £3.5 million compensation fund and a comprehensive service member respect initiative with mandatory training and independent monitoring. There's one additional requirement, Blackwood stated firmly, a public acknowledgement of the discrimination and a formal apology to all affected service members. Captain, the airline's counsel replied, we've already agreed to substantial compensation and policy changes. A public statement could be legally problematic. This was never about money, Blackwood said calmly. It was about respect for the uniform and those who serve. Without public accountability, there's no guarantee the same culture won't resurface when media attention fades. After a tense pause, Thornton nodded. I understand your position, Captain, and I believe you're right. He turned to his legal team. Draft language for a public statement acknowledging our failings. 2 weeks later, Blackwood stood tall in his full ceremonial uniform at a press conference held in the grand lobby of the Ministry of Defence. The scarlet tunic with its gold braiding and immaculate white gloves represented centuries of tradition and service, the very heritage that had been dismissed as just a costume months earlier. Good morning, Thornton began, his amplified voice echoing through the marble lobby. Today, Transatlantic Airways acknowledges a failure that goes beyond customer service shortcomings. We failed to show proper respect to the men and women who serve our nation with distinction and honour. The CEO detailed the discriminatory practices uncovered during the investigation, acknowledging the contrast between the airline's public support for military personnel and their actual treatment. He announced the comprehensive Service Member Respect Initiative, emphasising the independent oversight committee that would monitor compliance. Most importantly, Thornton continued, I offer our unreserved apology to Captain William Blackwood and all service members who experienced disrespect while travelling with us. Your dignity in the face of our failure stands as an example of the very values we failed to honour. At the invitation of the moderator, Blackwood addressed the gathered press. His voice, accustomed to issuing commands across parade grounds, carried effortlessly without the microphone. This case was never about one incident or one individual, he stated. It was about ensuring that the uniform, and those who earn the right to wear it, receive the respect they deserve, not just in ceremonial contexts, but in everyday life. As questions came from the press corps, Blackwood maintained the same composed dignity that had carried him through the entire ordeal. When asked if he felt vindicated by the outcome, he paused before answering. True vindication isn't found in settlements or public apologies, he replied thoughtfully. It's in knowing that the next soldier, sailor, or airman who boards an aircraft in uniform will be treated with the respect their service deserves. That's the only outcome that matters. For Blackwood, however, the most meaningful moment came later that day. As he returned to his duties at Wellington Barracks, a young guard preparing for his first public ceremony approached him hesitantly. Captain, the young man said, we've all heard what you did. Standing up like that, it makes wearing this uniform mean even more. Blackwood smiled slightly, adjusting the younger guard's bearskin cap to proper alignment. The uniform has always meant something. Sometimes we just need to remind others what that meaning is. Have you ever witnessed disrespect towards service members or others in uniform? How do you think businesses should properly honour those who serve their country? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective on this important issue. If you found this story meaningful, hit that subscribe button and press the bell icon to never miss our daily uploads. Help spread respect for those who serve by sharing this video with friends and family. Check out our previous videos appearing on your screen right now. We'll see you tomorrow at the same time with another brand new story.